The endless war. The warning sirens echoed through the command deck of the Coalition flagship Eternal Vigilance as Admiral Thane Corval watched another fleet disappear from his tactical display. His crystal blue skin darkened with stress, a biological response his Centaurian species had evolved over millions of years of adaptation to their harsh homeworld's radiation storms. "Seventh Fleet is gone, sir," reported his communications officer, her voice barely above a whisper. "All 43 ships destroyed. No survivors." Admiral Corval's four-fingered hands clenched into fists. 50 years of war against the Xerian hive, and they were no closer to victory than when the conflict began. If anything, they were losing ground faster than ever. The hive's ability to coordinate their attacks through their psychic network made them nearly unstoppable. Every battle felt like fighting against a single, impossibly vast mind that could predict their every move. "How many Coalition worlds have we lost this month?" Corval asked, though he dreaded the answer. 17, Admiral. The hive is accelerating their expansion. Their queen Vexara seems to have found a way to increase their reproduction rate while maintaining full psychic control over her offspring. General Mock's grunt entered the command deck, his massive 8-foot frame barely fitting through the reinforced doorway. The Orcanian warrior's thick hide was scarred from countless battles, and his tusks bore the ceremonial markings of his people's most elite fighters. His homeworld's crushing gravity had produced warriors that could break most materials with their bare hands. But even that legendary strength meant nothing against an enemy that could read their thoughts and counter their moves before they made them. "The defense of Kepler Station has failed," Grunt reported, his deep voice rumbling like distant thunder. "My best warriors held the line for 18 hours, but the hive adapted to every strategy we employed. They seemed to know our battle plans before we did." Admiral Corval nodded grimly. This was always the problem with fighting the Xerian hive. Their queen maintained a psychic link with every member of her species across the galaxy. When one hive soldier learned something, they all learned it instantly. Every tactic the Coalition developed was immediately known to their entire enemy force. "Sir," the communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the edge of the system. It's a ship requesting permission to dock. They claim to be from Earth." "Earth?" General Grunt frowned, his scarred brow wrinkling. "Never heard of it. What species are they?" "They call themselves humans, sir. They say they're here to join the Coalition." Admiral Corval felt a flicker of hope, though he tried to suppress it. New allies had joined their cause before, only to be swept away by the hive's relentless advance. Still, they couldn't afford to turn away potential help, no matter how unlikely it seemed. "Grant them permission to dock," he ordered. "Let's see what these humans have to offer." The ship that approached their station was unlike anything in the Coalition fleet. It was sleek and white with elegant curves that seemed more artistic than military. The UES Harmony looked like it had been designed by poets rather than warriors, its hull decorated with strange symbols that seemed to shift and change when viewed directly. Commander Zara Caney stepped off the docking shuttle with the kind of confident stride that impressed even veteran Coalition officers. She was tall for her species, with short-cropped black hair and intelligent green eyes that seemed to take in everything around her. Behind her came her crew, Dr. Elena Vasquez, a slim woman with kind eyes who carried herself like a healer, and Captain Marcus Stone, a broad-shouldered man whose calm demeanor suggested deep tactical thinking. "I am Commander Caney of the United Earth Space Force," she announced, offering a peculiar gesture where she extended her right hand toward Admiral Corval. "We've come to offer our assistance in your war against the Xerian hive." Admiral Corval studied the human carefully. She was small compared to most Coalition species, standing barely 6 feet tall. Her skin looked fragile, pale compared to his own crystalline hide. Her crew looked equally delicate. These beings appeared to come from what the Coalition termed a garden world, a planet so hospitable that its inhabitants never developed the natural armor, enhanced strength, or other survival adaptations common among spacefaring species. "Welcome, Commander Caney," Admiral Corval said formally. "I am Admiral Thane Corval of the Centaurian Republic. This is General Mox Grunt of the Orcanian clans. We appreciate any assistance you can provide, though I must warn you that this war has claimed the lives of billions of our finest warriors. General Grunt stepped forward, his massive form casting a shadow over the humans. No offense intended, Commander, but your species appears to come from a very peaceful world. The Zarian hive has defeated warriors from the harshest planets in the galaxy. What can soft-worlders like yourselves contribute to this fight? Commander Caney smiled, and there was something in that expression that made both alien officers pause. It wasn't the smile of someone naive or overconfident. It was the smile of someone who had seen terrible things and learned to find humor in the darkness. General Grunt, with respect, Earth may look peaceful from space, but appearances can be deceiving. My species has been fighting wars for over 10,000 years. We've fought with stones and clubs, with swords and arrows, with gunpowder and nuclear weapons. We've fought in frozen tundras and burning deserts, in deep oceans and thin mountain air. Most importantly, we've been fighting each other. Fighting your own species? Admiral Corval asked, his skin shifting to a shade of confused purple. Constantly, Dr. Vasquez added quietly. Humans have never had the luxury of psychic coordination like the hive. Every human thinks differently, plans differently, fights differently. We've had to learn to be unpredictable just to survive against other humans. Captain Stone stepped forward, pulling up a holographic display from his wrist device. We've studied your battle reports, Admiral. The Coalition fights with honor, courage, and tremendous skill. But you fight predictably. The Hive's psychic network allows them to analyze your tactics and develop counters within minutes. And you think you can do better? General Grunt challenged, though his tone was more curious than hostile. We think we can be different, Commander Caney replied. May we see your tactical data on the Hive's recent attacks? For the next several hours, the humans studied Coalition battle records with an intensity that impressed their hosts. They asked strange questions about seemingly minor details, the timing of certain maneuvers, the psychological profiles of Hive commanders, the patterns of civilian evacuation during attacks. This is fascinating, Dr. Vasquez said finally. The Hive's coordination is perfect from a military standpoint, but it creates a psychological vulnerability. They've become dependent on their shared consciousness. When something truly unexpected happens, something that doesn't fit their predictive models, their entire network experiences what we might call cognitive dissonance. Meaning what exactly? Admiral Corval asked. Captain Stone answered. Meaning that if we can create enough chaos and unpredictability in a battle, we might be able to overload their psychic network temporarily. Create windows of opportunity where they're acting on incomplete information. Impossible, General Grunt declared. We've tried random tactics before. The Hive adapts within minutes. You've tried tactical randomness, Commander Caney corrected. But randomness isn't the same as unpredictability. True unpredictability comes from creativity, from doing things that don't just defy expectations but seem completely illogical until the moment they work. The opportunity to test their theories came sooner than expected. Long-range sensors detected a massive Hive fleet approaching the Altair system, where 3 billion Coalition civilians were attempting to evacuate. The attacking force consisted of over 200 Hive vessels, including several of their feared queenships that could coordinate attacks across multiple star systems simultaneously. Admiral Corval gathered his remaining forces, 87 Coalition ships of various classes, representing the combined fleets of 12 different species. The humans brought only their single vessel, the UES Harmony. But Commander Caney requested permission to coordinate the battle plan. With respect, Commander, General Grunt said during the pre-battle briefing. You've never fought the Hive before. Perhaps you should observe this first engagement before. General, with equal respect, that's exactly why we need to lead this attack. Commander Caney interrupted. The Hive has 50 years of data on how Coalition forces fight. They have zero data on human tactics. The battle began as Coalition engagements always did. The Hive fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, their ships moving with the coordinated precision of a single organism. Queen Vexara's flagship, a massive biomechanical construct 3 kilometers long, positioned itself at the center of their formation, while smaller vessels spread out to envelop the Coalition fleet. Hive vessels are taking standard attack positions, reported the tactical officer aboard the Eternal Vigilance. They're preparing to execute Pattern 7 Alpha, their preferred formation for fighting numerically inferior forces. All Coalition ships, this is Admiral Corval, came the transmission. Execute defensive formation Gamma 3 and prepare for— Belay that order, Commander Caney's voice cut across all communications channels. All ships, this is Commander Caney. You are hereby authorized to ignore all standard tactical protocols. I repeat, ignore all standard protocols. The Coalition commanders were stunned into silence. In 50 years of warfare, no one had ever suggested abandoning their carefully developed battle strategies. Human commander, General Grunt's voice crackled over the comm. Have you lost your mind? Probably, Caney replied cheerfully. All Coalition vessels, I want you to do whatever feels most natural to your species. Centaurians, use your crystal formations to create light displays. Orcanians, charge directly at the enemy and roar as loud as you can. Vegan pacifists, start broadcasting poetry. Everyone else be creative. This is madness, Admiral Corval protested. This is humanity, Captain Stone replied. Trust us, Admiral. Sometimes madness is exactly what you need. What happened next defied everything the galaxy thought it knew about space warfare. The Coalition fleet scattered in completely random directions. Centaurian ships began pulsing their hulls in complex light patterns that served no tactical purpose. Orcanian vessels charged straight at the enemy, while broadcasting their traditional war songs at maximum volume. The peaceful Vegans started transmitting their greatest philosophical works directly at the Hive fleet. The Xerian Hive's response was immediate and catastrophic. Their psychic network, evolved to process coordinated attacks and logical strategies, suddenly found itself trying to analyze and counter dozens of seemingly insane behaviors simultaneously. The shared consciousness that was their greatest strength became a liability, as billions of hive minds tried to make sense of an enemy that wasn't making sense. Hive formation is breaking apart, the tactical officer reported in amazement. Their ships they're firing randomly. Some of them are turning back toward their own fleet. Queen Vexara's psychic scream echoed across all communication frequencies as her network experienced its first major disruption in centuries. The Hive Queen, who had controlled millions of minds across the galaxy with perfect precision, suddenly found herself struggling to maintain basic coordination among her own fleet. Now, Commander Caney ordered, all ships conventional attack pattern, hit them while they're confused. The Coalition fleet reformed with practiced efficiency and struck the disorganized Hive forces with everything they had. For the first time in 50 years, the Xerian Hive found themselves on the defensive, their ships struggling to coordinate their responses as their psychic network slowly recovered from the shock of encountering true human chaos. When the battle ended 3 hours later, the Coalition had achieved what many thought impossible. They had won a decisive victory against a numerically superior Hive force. 27 Hive vessels were destroyed, including 2 Queen ships, while Coalition losses were minimal. In the aftermath, as rescue teams pulled survivors from damaged ships and medics treated the wounded, Admiral Corval approached Commander Kane on the observation deck of the Eternal Vigilance. How did you know that would work? He asked. Commander Caney looked out at the stars, her expression thoughtful. Because we've been fighting beings like ourselves for millennia, Admiral. We've learned that the most dangerous enemy isn't the strongest or the smartest, it's the one you can't predict. The Hive's perfection made them predictable. Sometimes the best strategy is to have no strategy at all. General Grunt joined them, his scarred face showing something the humans had never seen before. Hope. Commander Caney, he said slowly, I believe your species may have just changed the course of this war. Dr. Vasquez smiled as she treated wounded Coalition soldiers in the medical bay. General, we haven't just changed the war. We've changed how this galaxy thinks about warfare itself. As news of the victory spread throughout Coalition space, something remarkable began to happen. For the first time in 50 years, the member worlds of the Coalition began to believe that victory against the Xerion Hive might actually be possible. The humans from the small, unremarkable world called Earth had done something that the galaxy's greatest military minds had failed to accomplish. They had given the Coalition something more powerful than any weapon. They had given them hope. But Commander Caney knew this was only the beginning. Queen Vexara was ancient and cunning, and she would adapt to this new threat just as the Hive had adapted to every challenge before. The real test would come when they faced the full might of the Xerian Hive, when creativity and chaos would have to stand against billions of coordinated minds bent on galactic domination. The war was far from over, but for the first time in decades, the outcome was no longer certain. And in a conflict that had seemed hopeless for so long, uncertainty was the most valuable gift humanity could offer. The human factor. 6 months after the Battle of Altair, the galaxy had become a very different place. News of the Coalition's victory had spread through every inhabited system, carried by refugee ships and merchant vessels to worlds that had long ago given up hope of freedom from the Xerian Hive. But Queen Vexara had not been idle during those months. Commander Zara Caney stood in the war room of the new Coalition headquarters on Sanctuary Prime, studying holographic displays that showed the current state of the conflict. The Hive had indeed adapted to their tactics, but not in the way anyone expected. Instead of trying to counter human unpredictability directly, Queen Vexara had begun fragmenting her psychic network into smaller, independent cells that could operate without constant coordination. "It's brilliant in a terrifying way," Dr. Elena Vasquez explained to the assembled Coalition leaders. "The Queen has created dozens of smaller hive minds, each capable of independent thought and action. We can still disrupt individual cells, but the overall network remains functional." Admiral Corval's crystalline skin had taken on a deep blue hue, reflecting his growing concern. "So our advantage has been neutralized." "Not neutralized," Captain Marcus Stone corrected, manipulating the holographic display to show recent battle formations. "Evolved. The Queen has made her forces more adaptable, but she's also made them more vulnerable to specific types of attacks. Each cell now has its own personality, its own tactical preferences. That makes them more human-like, which means we can use human psychology against them." General Grunt leaned forward, his massive frame casting shadows across the display. "What kind of psychology?" Commander Caney smiled, and once again the alien officers were struck by how that simple human expression could convey such complex emotions. The kind that comes from 10,000 years of warfare between thinking beings who can't read each other's minds. We've learned to use deception, misdirection, and manipulation not just as tools of war, but as art forms. The opportunity to test their new theories came when long-range scouts reported the most massive hive fleet ever assembled, moving toward the Coalition's core worlds. Nearly 1,000 vessels, including Queen Vexara's personal command ship, the Eye, Eternal Hunger, a biomechanical nightmare 20 kilometers long that pulsed with psychic energy. "They're coming for Earth," Commander Caney announced grimly. "The Queen has decided that humanity represents the greatest threat to her expansion, and she's bringing everything she has to eliminate us. Then we'll meet them in the void between stars," Admiral Corval declared. "Every ship we have, every warrior who can hold a weapon." "No," Caney said quietly. "We're going to let them come to Earth." The Coalition commanders stared at her in shock. General Grunt was the first to find his voice. "Commander, surely you don't mean to use your homeworld as bait." "That's exactly what I mean," Caney replied. "Earth isn't just my homeworld, General. It's the most complex psychological battlefield in the galaxy. Every human who's ever lived has been shaped by our world's unique challenges. If we're going to defeat the Hive, we need to fight them where humanity is strongest, in the chaotic complexity of our own minds." Dr. Vasquez stepped forward, her expression serious. "Admiral, there's something you need to understand about Earth. It's not just a garden world. It's a world that produces garden world inhabitants who are also warriors, poets, scientists, and philosophers simultaneously. Every human carries within them the accumulated psychological heritage of a species that has been fighting impossible odds for its entire existence. The Hive thinks they understand us now," Captain Stone added. "They've studied our tactics, our technologies, our apparent weaknesses, but they've never seen us on our own ground, fighting for our own home." The journey to Earth took 3 weeks, during which the Coalition fleet grew to unprecedented size. Word of the final battle had spread throughout the galaxy, and ships arrived, from species that had never before joined the fight. The peaceful ethereal collective sent their crystal vessels, powered by pure thought. The nomadic wanderer clans brought their ancient generation ships, armed with weapons that predated most civilizations. Even the mysterious Void Watchers emerged, from the deep space between galaxies to offer their aid. But it was the human reinforcements that truly amazed the Coalition commanders. Earth's defense fleet consisted of only 47 vessels, but each one was unique, reflecting the diversity of human thought and culture. The UES Beethoven was designed like a massive musical instrument, its hull capable of producing sounds that could disrupt enemy communication systems. The UES Sun Tzu was a stealth vessel that seemed to phase in and out of reality itself. The UES Mandela was a hospital ship that had been converted to broadcast messages of hope and unity across all known frequencies. Your species builds very strange warships, Admiral Corval observed as they approached Earth's solar system. We build ships that reflect who we are, Commander Caney replied. The Hive builds everything the same way because they think the same way. Humans build different ships because we think different thoughts. Earth itself was a revelation to the Coalition forces. From space, it appeared to be the garden world they had expected. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds swirling in seemingly random patterns. But as they drew closer, the complexity became apparent. The planet was covered with thousands of different ecosystems, each one presenting unique challenges that had shaped human development in different ways. Your world is beautiful, Admiral Corval said softly. It's home, Caney replied simply, and we're going to defend it. The Zarian Hive fleet arrived exactly as predicted, emerging from hyperspace in a formation that spanned half the solar system. Queen Vexara's eternal hunger positioned itself between Earth and its sun, casting a shadow across the planet's surface. The Queen's psychic voice resonated across all communication frequencies, speaking in the languages of every species present. I am Queen Vexara, eternal ruler of the Zarian Hive. For 50 years you have resisted our expansion, prolonging a war that should have ended with your submission. Now I offer you one final chance. Surrender the humans to us and the rest of you may live as servants of the Hive. Refuse, and every world you have ever loved will burn. The Coalition fleet formed a protective sphere around Earth. Their ships, representing dozens of different species and design philosophies. It was a magnificent sight, but they were outnumbered nearly 3-1. All Coalition vessels, this is Admiral Corval, came the transmission. Today we fight not just for our homes, but for the right to think freely, to dream differently, to be more than the sum of our programming. Whatever happens, we face it together. Queen Vexara. Commander Kane's voice cut across the psychic noise. I am Commander Zara Caney of the United Earth Space Force. On behalf of humanity and the Coalition of Free Worlds, I reject your offer. We will never surrender our freedom to think, to choose to be human. The Queen's laughter was like the sound of breaking glass. Humans. Such a small species from such an insignificant world. Do you truly believe your chaos can stand against the ordered perfection of the Hive? Let's find out, Caney replied. The battle began unlike any in galactic history. Instead of the coordinated attacks that had defined space warfare for millennia, the Coalition fleet scattered in seemingly random directions. But this time, there was a pattern within the chaos, a method to the madness that only humans could fully understand. The UES Beethoven began broadcasting a symphony composed specifically for this battle, its musical weapons creating harmonics that interfered with Hive communication frequencies. The UES Sun Tzu vanished from sensors entirely, appearing moments later inside the Hive formation to deliver devastating surprise attacks. The UES Mandela transmitted poetry and philosophy directly at Hive vessels, forcing their psychic networks to process concepts like love, hope, and individual identity that they had never encountered before. But it was the combined Coalition response that truly showcased the power of diversity. Zentaurian ships created prismatic light displays that confused Hive targeting systems. Orcanian vessels charged directly at the enemy, while broadcasting battle songs that spoke of individual glory and personal honor. The ethereal collectives, crystal ships phased through solid matter, striking from impossible angles. The Wanderer clan's ancient vessels unleashed weapons that manipulated time itself, creating pockets where hive ships moved at different speeds. Queen Vexara's perfect network, even fragmented into smaller cells, couldn't process the sheer variety of attacks. Each coalition species fought according to their own nature, their own strengths, their own unique view of the universe. The hive, despite their adaptations, found themselves trying to counter dozens of completely different tactical philosophies simultaneously. Impossible! The Queen's psychic voice crackled with strain. You cannot coordinate such diverse tactics without a unified command structure. That's where you're wrong, Commander Caney replied, as the UES Harmony dove through a gap in the hive formation. We don't need to coordinate, we need to trust. The battle raged for hours with neither side able to gain a decisive advantage. The hive's numerical superiority was offset by the coalition's unpredictability, while the coalition's diverse tactics were countered by the hive's rapid adaptation. Ships on both sides were destroyed, brave warriors from dozens of species giving their lives for the cause of freedom. It was Dr. Vasquez who made the crucial observation. Commander, look at the Queen's ship. The psychic energy patterns are becoming unstable. She's trying to coordinate too many different responses to our attacks. Commander Caney studied the readings and smiled. She's experiencing what we call decision paralysis. When you're used to perfect information and optimal choices, too many variables can be overwhelming. All coalition vessels, Caney broadcast, execute Protocol Omega. Show them what it means to be beautifully, chaotically, impossibly human. What happened next would be remembered as one of the most extraordinary moments in galactic history. Every human ship in the fleet began broadcasting simultaneously. Music, poetry, mathematical equations, philosophical debates, historical accounts, scientific theories, and personal stories from billions of individual human lives. The transmissions were chaotic, contradictory, and utterly human in their complexity. The hive's psychic network, already strained by the diverse coalition attacks, suddenly found itself trying to process the entire accumulated cultural heritage of humanity. Love songs and war poems, scientific breakthroughs and artistic masterpieces, the dreams and fears and hopes of an entire species, all transmitted at once in a cacophony of human consciousness. Queen Vexara screamed, her psychic voice breaking across every frequency as her network collapsed under the weight of trying to understand beings who had never been meant to be understood. The eternal hunger began to pulse erratically, its biomechanical systems failing as the Queen lost control of her own thoughts. I can't. How do you live with so much chaos? The Queen's voice was no longer imperious but confused, almost frightened. We don't just live with it, Commander Caney replied gently. We celebrate it. Chaos isn't our weakness, Your Majesty. It's our strength. Every human is unique. Every thought is different. Every dream is personal. We've learned to find beauty in the complexity. The hive fleet began to scatter, their vessels moving in confused patterns as their psychic coordination failed. But something unexpected happened. Instead of continuing to attack, many of the hive ships simply stopped, their crews experiencing individual thought for the first time in their lives. What is this feeling? Came transmissions from multiple hive vessels. I am myself. I am not the hive. I am me. Dr. Vasquez leaned forward in amazement. Commander, I think we've accidentally given them something they've never had before, individual consciousness. The war's end came not with a final battle, but with a moment of profound understanding. Queen Vexara, her psychic network permanently altered by contact with human consciousness, began to change. The rigid perfection of the hive gave way to something new, a collective that celebrated diversity rather than enforcing conformity. I see now. The Queen's voice was softer, more thoughtful. Perfection is not the goal. Growth is. Learning is. Becoming is. In the months that followed, the Xerian hive transformed into something unprecedented, a society that maintained psychic connection while allowing individual thought. Former hive worlds became centers of learning and culture, as billions of newly awakened minds explored the possibilities of consciousness. The coalition evolved as well, becoming not just a defensive alliance, but a true community of species that celebrated their differences. Earth became a hub of interspecies cooperation, its chaotic diversity serving as a model for peaceful coexistence. Commander Caney stood on the observation deck of the rebuilt Eternal Vigilance, now serving as the flagship of the new Galactic Cooperation Council. Beside her, Admiral Corval's crystalline skin showed patterns of contentment, while General Grunt's scarred face wore an expression of deep satisfaction. "Do you think it will last?" Admiral Corval asked, looking out at the mixed fleet of ships, from dozens of different species including several converted hive vessels. "Nothing lasts forever," Commander Caney replied, "but that's what makes it precious. Humans have learned that the most beautiful things in the universe are temporary, imperfect, and unique." Dr. Vasquez joined them, carrying a report that detailed the latest developments from former hive space. "The integration is proceeding better than expected. It seems that consciousness, once awakened, is very difficult to suppress. The former hive drones are adapting to individual thought remarkably quickly." General Grunt chuckled, a sound like distant thunder. "Who would have thought that the greatest weapon against a hive mind would be a simple human trait, the ability to think for oneself?" "It's not a weapon," Caney corrected gently. "It's a gift. And the most beautiful thing about gifts is that they multiply when shared." As they watched, a small ship detached from the station and began its journey toward the edge of the system. It was a joint mission, humans, former hive members, and coalition species working together to explore new worlds and spread the message that diversity and individuality were strengths, not weaknesses. The war was over, but the real work was just beginning. The galaxy had learned that true strength came not from perfection, but from the courage to be imperfect. Not from uniformity, but from the celebration of difference. Not from the elimination of chaos, but from the wisdom to find beauty in complexity. And, at the heart of it all was a simple truth that humanity had known for millennia. The most powerful force in the universe isn't the desire to conquer or control, but the courage to be yourself in a cosmos that constantly tries to make you something else. The stars shone brighter that night, each one unique, each one perfect in its imperfection, each one a reminder that in the vast darkness of space, individual lights matter most when they choose to shine together.